Greeting friends, scholars, wizards, dwarven realms, and welcome back to our archives. I have been expecting you. Bearers of the One Rings, prepare to take a deep dive into one of the most rich in history dwarven realms in all of Middle-earth, Khazad-Dum, commonly referred to as Moria, as it was referred to by the Lothlorien and mainly the entirety of the elven population in Arda, or the Dwarven, was an underground ancient primordial kingdom beneath the Misty Mountains. It was known for being the ancient realm of the dwarves of Durin's folk, and the most famed and highly acclaimed of all dwarven realms, effortlessly being one of, if not the realm that possessed the most jewels and riches. Today, we're going to be delving into its histories, including the years of the trees, the first, second, and third ages, and finally, its eventual reclamation and salvaging in the fourth age. Now, let us prepare. Adorn yourself in your armor, grab Shadowfax, and prepare to take a deep delve into the land of Khazad-Dum. The Dwarven was founded by Durin the Deathless in the far distant past, long before even the creation of the sun and moon in the years of the trees, where the Dark Lord Morgoth still imposed his reign of tyranny. Durin had awoken at Mount Gundabad, not long after the elves first awoke, and as eldest among the fathers of the dwarves, was acknowledged as preeminent and a primordial entity among them, a status subsequently inherited by his further descendants, the kings of the Longbeards. From Mount Gundabad, Durin made his way south until, according to legend, Durin ultimately found, quote, a glen of shadows between two great arms of the mountains, above which three white peaks were shining. Within this heavily wooded valley, a long series of short waterfalls cascaded down to a long oval lake which appeared to have a magical quality. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glittering stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. Perceiving these stars as a crown glittering above himself, Durin took this as an auspicious, unquestionable sign, and laid the name Khazad-Dum, the Mirror, which Gimli would one day gaze within. The three peaks overshadowing the lake are named Barazimba, the Redhorn, Zirakizigidil, the Silvertine, and Busagastathul, Cloudy Head. The icy cold thins below the lake he called Kibid Nala, the source of the Silverlone, and the valley itself. He gained the name Azanobizar, the Dimril Dale. Durin chose the eastward-facing chaos above Khazad-Dum as the earliest beginnings and foundations of his new stronghold. All of these palaces became revered amongst Durin's folk in later days. His descendants erected a rune-carved stone monolith in his honour, Durin's Stone, on the site where he had first peered into the Mirror and seen the crown of stars. And although it had become indecipherably and unrecognisably weather-worn by the end of the Third Age, broken, rivers of cracks running through it, and faded, the influence of Durin I, founding king of Khazad-Dum and dwarven father, was never forgotten. The long reign of Khazad-Dum's first king was a golden age for the dwarves' people, inducing upon the dwarves and bestowing them great riches and prosperity that would only be reciprocated and paralleled during the time of Erebor. This was remembered as Durin's Day. This day was also applied to the Dwarvish New Year at the start of their new year and the last day of autumn, one of the most unique details in Tolkien's works. During that period, Khazad-Dum grew continuously in size and population until it became greatest of all mansions of the dwarves, even above Erebor. Yes, you heard me correct. This dwarven realm was famed even above the kingdom under the mountain, even before the return of the Noldor to Middle-earth. By that time, Khazad-Dum was already a name and rumour from the words of dwarves of the Blue Mountains to all the Eldar of Beleriand. During the reign of Durin the Deathless, some of the great wonders of dwarvish architecture were founded in Khazad-Dum, including but not limited to Durin's Bridge, the Second Hall, the Endless Stair, and Durin's Tower. After his death, the reputation of Durin's realm continued to expand, not merely due to its spiritual ascendancy over the fathers of the dwarves as their elders, or to Dwarven's growing size and magnitude, but to its great wealth that lay within the earth, founded upon the uniquely precious mithril source, which was universally prized yet found nowhere else in Middle-earth. The dwarves decided to delve even deeper into Khazad-Dum to find more mithril. Eventually, this would lead the kingdom into ruin. Khazad-Dum played no part in the wars of Beleriand, and in fact gave him a respite from orc attacks throughout the First Age, when Morgoth needed all his strength elsewhere. The eventual death of Durin the Deathless occurred before the end of the First Age. He was buried within a tomb in Khazad-Dum. Early in the Second Age, Khazad-Dum's realm of the Longbeards was enriched in culture, skills, and population by a large number of refugees from Belagos and Noglod. Cities ruined at the end of the First Age, along with most of Beleriand, in the cataclysmic final battle against Morgoth, concluding the 40-year-long War of Wrath, which I've already made a video about. The dwarves of Belagos and Nogrod were not Longbeards, but Broadbeams and Firebeards. Whether they remained separate clans or groups within their new home, or intertwined with the Longbeards, is not confirmed. With the foundation of the Noldorian realm of Eregion to the west of Khazad-Dum, around the Second Age 700, friendly relationships were erected between the Longbeards and the elves that were firmly established and kept for many years. This friendship also resulted in a massive westwards extension of subterranean realm of Khazad-Dum. Its habitable parts remained in the eastward side, but passages were excavated through miles of rock that terminated at a gigantic stone portal, the West Gate, that stood on the borders of Eregion. Celebrimbor, one of the greatest elven craftsmen ever, the Lord of Eregion, used Ithildin, lettering on the gate on behalf of its builder, his friend Navi, a great craftsman of Khazad-Dum. The inscription read, Im Navi hain incant, Celebrimbor o Eregion, Tethand I thu hin. I, Navi, made them. Celebrimbor of Eregion drew these signs. The West Gate permitted the elf lady Galadriel and her followers to pass eastwards through Khazad-Dum and settle in Lothlorien, downstream of the Zanabizil. Galadriel's presence enabled Sylvan elves to return to Lothlorien. They had earlier evacuated the area to escape Khazad-Dum's growing power, in fear of the mighty Dwarven realm. All of the Dwarvedales was originally illuminated by many shining lamps of crystals, although the halls of the highest level were also lit with windows and shafts carved through the mountainsides. These levels lay between 50 flights or more stone steps, with 7 hollowed-out mountain ground above level, many more subterranean levels or deeps beneath the great gates at the head of the Dimrill Dale. Every level comprised a multitude of arched passages, chambers, and merely pillared halls, often with black walls, polished and smooth as glass. Below the level of the gates lay mines, treasuries, and even dungeons, although far below the lowest deep of Khazad-Dum lay primordial tunnels in perpetual darkness, gnawed by nameless things, including the Watcher in the Water, that had lived there since the earliest beginnings of Arda. Few, if any, actually glimpsed these creatures, except for the Fellowship who glimpsed the Watcher in the Water, which Gandalf suggested may have come from these regions. One important feature of the Dwarvedales was the defensive structure known as Durin's Bridge, a slender bridge of stone, without curb or rail, that spanned a 50-foot wide chasm of intermittent strength, allowing enemy soldiers to cross it with only single fire, one after another, not side by side as intended, allowing for the dwarves to effortlessly able to pick them off with their archery. Another, steeped in legend, was the Endless Stair, which ascended from the lowest dungeon to the highest peak of Khazad-Dum, where it terminated within Durin's Tower, carved from solid rock at the tip of the Zira-Gazil. During the War of the Elves and Sauron, Eregion was decimated, and the survivors, along with a relief army led by Elrond, were in danger of being overtaken and decimated. But Durin the Third dispatched an army of dwarves, which attacked Sauron's army in the rear, allowing the elves to escape. Following the battle, the dwarves retreated into their city and closed the gates. It is unclear if the Ring of Power possessed by the House of Durin was given to them directly by Sauron, as the dwarves themselves had held it had been given to them by Lord Celebrimbor himself, directly to Durin, though it had certainly been created by the Dark Lord and embedded with his dark malice. Afterwards, Sauron harboured a deep hatred and loathing for Khazad-Dum, and orders his orcs to trouble Durin's folk at every single turn, even though the halls of Khazad-Dum were too deep and strong to be filled with a people too numerous and valiant for Sauron to conquer from without. Despite this, its people began to dwindle from this time. In the reign of Durin the Fourth, the dwarves joined the last alliance of elves and men, fighting against Sauron in the Battle of Dagorlod and the Siege of Barad-dûr. Throughout the early Third Age, the dwarves of Khazad-Dum expanded their treasure, but their numbers continued to dwindle and wane. The majority of their wealth was based on the hoards of mithril they had covered to themselves, which they mined in their deepest tunnels, and as the centuries continued to wane, the dwarves delved ever deeper for precious metal. In the Third Age in 1980, they dug too deeply and greedily for Mithril until they lost. They unearthed a terrible creature, a nameless terror in the depths beneath the city. This dreadful creature, known later as a Balrog, wrought decimation and destruction throughout the city, wiping out most of the dwarves and slaying King Durin VI. Thereafter, the creature was named Durin's Bane. The dwarves tried to fight, but the following year Durin's own heir, Nain I, was also slain, forcing the dwarves to abandon their home for good. After the dwarves had left, Khazad-Dum gathered dust and stood there dark and empty, before the sinister creature that lurked in its depths. This was when it was named Moria, the Black Pit. The monster, later unveiled as the Balrog of Morgoth, dwelt alone in Moria for nearly 5 centuries, until it was populated once again, not by the dwarves. Their foolish acts of reclaiming the city had only ended in tyranny and death. The goblins, fleeing from the north, began to raid the abandoned city of its treasures and occupied it from time to time. They came upon the Balrog, but established a sort of uneasy coexistence with it. Stjarn began to dispatch troops out to the orcs and cave trolls to populate Moria, making the abandoned city a stronghold for them to multiply and breed Sauron's armies. During the Battle of Azanabalzar, many of these orcs were felled in the valley beneath the eastern gate of Moria in Third Age 2799. The numbers were reduced dramatically, but the Balrog still remained, and many orcs and trolls with him, and so Khazad-Dum remained a stronghold and bastion of tyranny and malice. The wizard Gandalf entered the city for the first time at some point between the Third Age 2845 and the Third Age 2850. Searching and scouring Middle-earth for King Thrain II, who had recently dissipated on a journey to the Lonely Mountain. Now we will move on to Balin's expedition. In the Third Age 2989, the dwarves of the Lonely Mountain, descendants of the ancient Durin's folk who had recently reclaimed their homeworld, ignited an attempt to reclaim and recolonize their ancestral dwelling, Khazad-Dum. The expedition was led by Balin, son of Fundin, one of the 13 members of Thorin Oakenshield's company of dwarves who accompanied Bilbo Baggins and Thorin on the quest of Erebor. He led a group of dwarves from Erebor to Moria and successfully drove back orcs, taking many of the eastern halls and recovering priceless ancestral treasures such as Durin's axe. However, the Balrog remained active, and the number of orcs was too great compared to their small company, and all, including Marin, was slain in Third Age 2994, mercilessly murdered after a 5-year-long expedition. When the Fellowship of the Ring set out from Rivendell on the quest of the Ring, they were forced to make way through Moria after the failed attempt of climbing Clahadras, Redhorn, where they were pursued by wargs. They entered through the western gate near the lake with dark waters, from which a tentacle monster, that is actually revealed to be the Watcher in the Water, emerged and attempted to kill Frodo Baggins and steal the One Ring. When inside, the Fellowship passed through many tunnels and great halls until finally reaching the chamber of Mazarbul and finding the book, explaining the last accounts of Balin's expedition and his death. They were taken by surprise as orcs and cave trolls pursued them through Moria to the bridge of Khazad-Dum, where the Balrog rose from the depths. Gandalf bravely confronted this creature, and the two briefly duelled on the bridge before plummeting together into the shadowy abyss below. This saved Gandalf's friends' lives as they carried out of Moria to the Dimral Dale. Gandalf and the Balrog both survived the fall, however, with the waters briefly quenching the Balrog's fires. The wizard then pursued the monster up the endless stair to the peak of Celebridir, where a final battle took place. In the end, Gandalf decimated and defeated the Balrog, and cast its carcass down upon the mountainside, ruining it, before succumbing to the wounds of his battle. Following their exile from Khazad-Dum, the Longbeard dwarves always yearned for their homeland, even after more than 1,000 years had passed. Azanabalzar became the deep-shadowed valley which we cannot forget, and just as they felt compelled to continue incorporating the image of those mountains into many works of metal and stone, and into many songs and tales, they stand tall in our dreams. With the destruction of the Balrog, the way was at last clear for the Longbeards to reclaim the Dwardoth, and it is told that a few centuries into the Fourth Age, during the Seventh, a descendant, some sources say, of Thorin III Stonehelm, at last led his people back to their longed-for ancient homeland, retrieving what they could of Khazad-Dum's once mighty riches, and leaving the city to rot in eternity, bidding all of their folk to never return to Khazad-Dum. The age of Khazad-Dum was gone. It was time to rebuild one final time. Well, my various spies and servants of the enemies, what did you think of this video? Would you like us to cover some more very exquisite realm of the dwarves? Or do you think that this video was not actually what it's cracked up to be? I am going to release a video covering more of the dwarves soon, covering all the lines of Durin and why Durin the Seventh was largely believed to be the last iteration of Durin. Goodbye, my friends. I'll see you in the lands of Middle-earth, travelling across the plains of Ardar, and into Mordor, where the shadows lie.